before that happened. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you, Josiah.
Cool. Sorry, Susanna, you can continue with the agenda. I'm sorry about the interruption. I just saw it coming and was like, oh no.
No, all good. Thank you for the reminder. I actually, when I first heard about that, I thought the way it was described was that it was a glitch after a recent update, but I guess it's here to stay, so that's miserable. Okay,
Yeah,
well,
and
everybody, as you can see from the, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, please go ahead.
All right, so what we're looking at right now is the agenda for today's meeting. We'll start with intros. We'll do some minutes approval from June, and then we'll talk about the parallel working group, the AI Economic Task Force, and then talk a little bit about what's being referred to as the Pathfinders model for development training on AI, and then we'll do a little bit of public comment. I see one member who's just rejoined again, so if anyone's having tech issues, then thank you for staying with us and being patient. All right, intros, I'll ask members to just list names and affiliations in the chat. Anyone who's not a member of the council who would like to say hello, please feel free to do so either in the chat or just by coming off mute and introducing yourself, if you so choose. Now, while that is going, I would like to invite members of the council to review some meeting minutes. And here we go. And I'm going to paste a link in the chat to the June minutes. This link does directly open a document. It won't take you to a page per se, just so you know. So council members, if you would like to just take a quick look at those minutes, and when anyone is ready, we can take a motion on how to act.
Here, I just pulled those up on screen as well for reference.
Great, thank you.
I'll motion to approve those minutes.
Great, thanks. Motion by Josiah to approve. Is there a second?
I second.
Thanks so much, Ron. Any discussion? Any errata, other edits? All right, so all in favor of approving June's meeting minutes, please say aye, raise a hand, or otherwise signify.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Anybody opposed, please say nay or make a mean face or otherwise signify. Okay, any abstentions? Please say abstain. Great, thank you. Minutes are approved. All right, let's hear an update on the AI Economic Task Force.
Sure, I believe I'm taking this one. We discussed last time the kind of mission of the Economic Task Force and how it intersects with this group. If anyone has questions on that, I'm happy to field those. Since we last met, the remaining membership of the task force beyond the 3 ex officio members who were previously announced. We've identified who those folks are. The governor's office is doing the part that they do to sign off on those, but we're expecting to have an announcement of who those members are shortly. And then the way that this task force is structured, there are quite a few members of the task force. In addition to that, several of them, a total of 6 of the members, serve as co-leads of 3 different working groups, and those working groups will have additional membership on them. So there will be quite a few people involved in this. A lot of folks from the public involved in this task force. I'm expecting it will be over 30 people involved in the task force total. And so we've got a bunch of people who have expressed interest in being on one of those 3 work groups. So after the task force appointments are finalized, the co-chairs will kind of assemble their teams to work in the working groups, and both the task force and the working groups will start meeting and working on their deliverables. Go ahead, John.
2 quick questions. Now I'm reading this. Is this economic acceleration for all Vermonters or specifically for government?
This is outside facing, so they have very little that's government focused on this task force. Yeah.
The one thing I don't see on here is resources, like compute resources or cloud resources or things like that. So I think infrastructure is something that should be considered as part of the economic acceleration. I don't know if it's a separate point. I don't know if it's a separate point, but several of us have been talking about, like how could we use UVM's small supercomputer? How could we build it up? Or how do we create, a startup fund for tokens on things like Claude? I think it would be really good to consider infrastructure.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good call.
And I'd be part of it. I'd love to be part of it.
Cool. Thank you, John. I guess in other news relevant to the AI Economic Task Force, Secretary Curley has announced that she is no longer going to be Secretary of ACCD. She's moving to a role at Vermont Gas. She was one of the ex officio members of the AI Economic Task Force. So whoever is the interim will be serving on ACCD's behalf as one of the chairs of the task force. So just wanted to flag that as a personnel change from the previously announced personnel. But yeah, I think that's about it on this one, unless anyone has additional questions. Is this a good time? I guess, Susanna and Miles, one of the things that we had, we don't have slides for, but we had said that we would cover in this meeting was the impacts of H814 and H816 on our group, because they changed the membership of our group. So is this the right time to do that part?
From my perspective, yes.
Yeah, this feels correct.
All right. So let me dive into that. I will take the screen share after I drop the links to the 2 in chat. So this is 814, 816. These are both healthcare related bills that the legislature passed this year, and they both create new work for us. So we will be spending some time thinking about healthcare through the fall. And I wanted to just walk through what the bills say so that you all can start thinking about, and maybe Amanda, you can give us some tips on what we should go read and start educating ourselves on these topics. But here we go. I'll dive into this. So H814 is about a couple of things. The main thrust being around mental health and neurological rights. This bill leans much more on the neurological rights side of things, and making sure that as more wearable tech becomes available, that privacy of thought and neurological privacy in general is maintained. So that's kind of the framing of the bill overall. The section that applies to us is a little bit different focus than that, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the rest of the bill, but you are welcome to read it and enjoy it all. And I did testify on it. I have some idea of what is in the rest of the bill, but am not by any means an expert on those pieces. So the council, this bill added, so both bills add people to the council. They add different people to the council, and council has not yet updated all the statutes and folded the changes into one. So we'll be seeing new membership coming from both bills. So a member from the National Association of Social Workers, an expansion of the human services role to the health role to a human services role. Go ahead, Amanda.
I was just gonna note, so I was the designee from the Commissioner of Health, so chosen by Dr. Levine. So I think that potentially changes things. So I don't know if that means that this has to go back to Secretary Samuelson and she may choose someone else. I'm just not sure like procedurally, but I was chosen by the Commissioner of Health and not this. So I just want to note because I don't represent all of AHS, it's just one department.
Yeah, no, thank you for flagging that. And yes, I would expect Secretary Samuelson to need to say, yes, Amanda is still the person who's going to be representing, and then kind of giving you some guidance on the broader perspective. But yeah, that's a conversation I haven't had, and I haven't heard from AHS that they're changing their appointee yet. So you're still here, and we're glad of it. Let's see. We also have someone from the Vermont Medical Society with experience in healthcare who will be joining us. A member with experience in public education appointed by the NEA, the state treasurer, and a shift in the governor's appointee to someone with relevant knowledge and experience. Currently, it says someone with experience in ethics and human rights. They're shifting that to a National Association of Social Workers, Vermont Association of Social Workers appointee, and the governor appointee is shifting to someone with just general knowledge and experience about that. And they're also extending the duration of the council to 2030, which was something that we had asked for. And then, I guess, any questions on membership changes from this bill? Okay, I'm going to pop over to the other bill and look at the membership changes here. 2 additional members added under 816, which is the mental health and AI bill. That is the director of the Office of Professional Regulation and the executive director of the Board of Medical Practice or designee. So a lot of healthcare and health regulation related members will be joining us over the next month or two. Okay, that's the new membership. So now the new deliverables, the new reports that they're asking for the end of this year. So they're looking for the AI Council to review the guidelines and recommendations from the AMA, NASWA, the NEA, and other professional organizations regarding the use of AI in healthcare, human services, education, public participation, and public finance. So that's just like what's out there of kind of a literature review. Research potential uses of AI in public participation and public finance, and create opportunities for public education and engagement in the development of AI policy. Those are kind of an expansion of our scope, especially this like directly go ahead and create opportunities. They didn't provide any funding for that or any new staffing for that. But we now have an expanded mandate specifically to create opportunities for public education engagement. We were already largely kind of engaging in that work as individuals. So I'm not sure how big the changes are, but I'd love thoughts from the group on that. And then this is the new report that they are asking for this year under this bill. Don't worry, we have 2 reports this year because it's more fun that way. The report is any additional statute changes beyond what was already in this bill and 816 around neurological rights, protections related to neurotechnologies, and definitions for relevant terminology, guidance on the use of generative AI by the professions that the OPR, Office of Professional Regulation, regulates. Regulation of the use of AI and augmented intelligence in health insurance utilization review. And then additional ways that government can promote ethical and responsible use of AI technology in health and human services and in education. Project pilots that improve public engagement in public finance. And then if we should extend the council again beyond 2030. So that's all new material that they want in that report. I'm going to pause there for a minute, and I'd love just to have some general discussion about the 4 things in this report, and kind of what questions you all have at this point. And then Miles and I will work over the next few months on kind of preparing briefs for you on each of these topics so that we can drill into them. What questions do you have at this point? Let me frame it a different way. What types of information should we ask Miles to pull together for us so that we can have a useful discussion on these topics?
Josiah, it's Chris Curtis. I guess, I think anytime you are going to be reporting on regulated professions, it seems to me before the task force could meaningfully report on that or make any kind of recommendations, probably those professions need to be approached, and each one may have a very different view of how, whether, if regulation of AI in the context of their professions makes sense. And so that could be a much, I could imagine an initial report saying, we need more time. Like, which professions are you talking about? How many? And if you just would need, like, I would imagine, like, serious and detailed stakeholder involvement to figure out in any kind of meaningful way, like, what that would mean to those professions and how, whether or if regulation, because so a statutory regulation or a recommendation for a statutory change would be outside the context of the professions that regulate themselves anyway. And so the question would be, like, does that require a statutory change, or is it just a recommendation that the professions themselves should include some form of AI regulation or best practice standard for those professions and have that as part of their training or ongoing, if it's medicine CMEs, if it's law CLEs, if it's, other professions, finance, real estate, housing, there's all kinds of regulated professions. And so how and whether or if that's appropriate or not, and how those tools would be deployed or not, seems to me very specific to each of those. And so that could be a very heavy lift. I mean, there could be just a broad sense that, like, if the regulated professions are deploying AI for particular uses, they should disclose what those uses are, and they should develop best practices around it. I mean, that's a 50,000-foot level, and then leave it to the professions to decide for themselves sort of how to police themselves, how to make those declarations to the public. But I don't know. That's potentially a huge project.
It is. So I think that is why they added the number of additional folks from the fields. I have taken the list of fields that they're adding members from as kind of the priority list of what legislature is interested in us looking at. Not to say that we couldn't look beyond that, but that was kind of how I read that. In addition, I think the focus is on the work that OPR does. And in order to do any AI related rulemaking that OPR feels is necessary, is there any statute change needed for those regulated professions? And my gut is going to be OPR already has pretty wide discretion over how they regulate regulated professions. But I think that's, I'm excited to have the director of OPR in this group to be able to get their read on that as well. But thank you, Chris. That is helpful. And I think, yes, this report is going to be relatively high level, I expect, just because the breadth of what it would be, kind of to do this in detail would be overwhelming. Okay, great. Other thoughts, other things that you'd be looking for from me and Miles to help us achieve the goals of this report? Okay. Let me ask this. We're going to be reaching out to that list of organizations that we went through and identifying the Vermonters who will be joining the council. I would love to have Susanna and I as the chairs will probably be doing a lot of the onboarding of those folks. But if anyone else is interested in participating in the onboarding of, a couple of those folks, I don't want to yeah, I expect we will be doing one-on-ones with many different people, in addition to some group onboarding. So if anyone wants to participate in that, we would welcome anybody who wants to. So feel free to reach out to Susanna and I if you want to come along. Okay. All right. So I'm going to jump over to the other report because this very large report will be a very large report that we'll be spending a lot of time on over the next few months. Here's the other one. This is the use of AI specifically within mental health professions. So we're going to submit a written report to GovOps and Healthcare and Senate GovOps and Health and Welfare regarding the regulation of the use of AI by mental health professionals, including recommendations for legislative action. I would encourage you to go back and check out some of the testimony around this bill. It already does have some regulation. So they've explicitly called out that prohibited use of AI pursuant to the statute up above is now unprofessional conduct for the purposes of mental health usage. And they were exploring in this bill the use of like AI chatbots for mental health, things like that. And they're looking for us to do a deep dive on AI and mental health and what regulation is going on in other states and exploring what Vermont should do in that space. So that's another like really big topic. So any questions, anything specifically that you'd like us to go do background research on?
Is the presumption that, I mean, I know how that can be a bad thing, but is there a presumption that it can only be a bad thing? I mean, this seems like the same kind of concern that, AI is evil no matter what. While it does have concerns, I mean, I think it's showing that in the proper use can be very, very helpful for certain types of people. So I would kind of curious, is this I guess I can't ask what's the intention of this, but would we get representative of people who would be, able to talk to the potential goods?
Yeah, I think I kind of testified on both of these bills simultaneously because there was a lot of overlap between them at the time. And that was kind of the point that I made is like making mental health more available is a net good thing. Make mental health services more available helps people.
Right.
The concern that legislature had was the number of there was twofold. There was mental health providers using AI in making high stakes decisions without adequate oversight and review, which I think is a legitimate concern. And that's kind of what they tried to cover with this bill. Then the other part was AI chatbots being built by people who don't who aren't either well qualified or well intentioned, and labeling them as cognitive behavioral therapy, especially right now. Like there are a million chatbots that do that to varying degrees of actual doing
Right.
that.
So those are absolutely legitimate concerns. And, I'm sure bad things would happen. My worry would be is that in trying to legislate something, you also eliminate the good, like you said, is in the right cases. So I just was curious in terms of representation, how we go forward with that. How do we get a balanced view of that so that whatever protections we want to put in place don't inadvertently block the potential good uses?
Yeah.
I
think that's why they're looking for a recommendation, because that was kind of exactly what we covered in the testimony. It was like, don't block everything. And so the solution was hand it to this group to make a recommendation on how to approach that well. So
interesting. Okay, thank you very much.
I think a key question there is also, how do you know? How do you distinguish between when a use might be beneficial and when it may be detrimental? And so I'm sure that lawmakers are rightly very concerned about how a chatbot or any kind of AI service would distinguish in any kind of meaningful way um, among those two potential outcomes or offers of assistance. And by the way, I will just say, I don't know if any of you live in the central Vermont area, but I've been watching with some amusement or maybe bemusement about the Kinney Drugs chatbot and people in Montpelier who are trying desperately to get their prescriptions and just blaming Poor Kinney Drugs for their deployment of their chatbot that is they may be simple prescriptions, they may be complex and important mental health type of prescriptions. But people are extremely frustrated. And that's just like a simple tool. That's like scheduling an appointment and pick when to pick up your prescription. But it clearly has interfered with the goodwill of the people in our capital city. So that's just one very, very minor, tiny example, but already it's caused great consternation and quite an uproar in the capital, and that's just a simple use. So forget about diagnosis, treatment, all those kinds of things that obviously carry much more profound implications.
Yeah, for sure. I think one other trend that came up during the testimony is a number of the large language models have historically, like the widely used ones, like the ChatGPTs and Geminis and those, have historically not been good at saying, you need help from a professional. Like, I'm not qualified to answer this. And that was another area that they were interested in. Like, is there a way to say, like, if you're a major lab, you gotta have your bot defer to experts when it's out of its depth. I don't know if there's a way to do that. That was another that Chris, what you were just saying made me think of that that kind of flavor of we're trying, like, it's trying to be helpful and it's actually the opposite of helpful, and that kind of deployment can have significant downsides. Okay, well, both of these bills are in chat. I invite you to read them. Neither of them are very long. I think we got a total of 11 pages. So they're short, relatively easy reads. Have a read over them. That will help you to understand some of legislature's framing. Miles, maybe we can try to get a distillation of of what was discussed in testimony to frame intent, so we can have a sense of what that was. And then Susanna and I will be reaching out to the various organizations that are listed as having new members. We'll start onboarding them, and I don't know if we'll have them all in by August's meeting, but by September's meeting, we'll certainly have them. I would appreciate if all of you could have done some background thinking and reading on this, and we'll start sketching what are the areas for further study, how do we want to prioritize that over the number of sessions that we have, and if we need any outside working sessions to get any of this done. Thanks, everybody. Miles, I'll toss it back over to you to talk about internal AI rollout and what we're working on there.
So thank you, Josiah. And obviously, for context, Josiah was and will continue to be integral to this effort as well. So please feel free to interject if you have any points or additions that you want to make here. But the thing I just wanted to update the council on is this Claude Code security focused training that we have implemented for the first time this week, which we're calling our group of Pathfinders. And the gist of it is that, we've been planning out training to begin getting our developers within the state government up to speed on best practices for using frontier AI tooling within the context of software development, namely a tool called Claude Code, which is produced by Anthropic, and it's essentially an extension of the underlying Claude models that Anthropic develops that are available, in a development context. So the specific mechanism that we used for this effort, it's called the Claude Code VS Code extension. And essentially the way it works is developers do a lot of work in IDEs or integrated development environments, which are basically just user interfaces that make it a lot easier for developers to interact with code and manage version control and other critical elements of the development practice within one application. And Claude Code integrates with those existing systems that devs use. And really what we're trying to do here at a high level is to build, practical and particularly security focused AI development skills within the context of our existing AI governance frameworks. That there's a lot of concern right now at a high level, just with respect to artificial intelligence and its impact on, security vulnerability exploitation, both in the private sector and then obviously for public sector organizations like us. And one of the sort of overarching concerns here is that the frontier models that we have access to right now, so things like the most up-to-date models being produced by OpenAI and by frontier labs like Anthropic, they're incredibly capable at identifying security vulnerabilities in applications. I know Josiah has previously given this example in our internal discussions, but vulnerabilities that used to take conventional human security researchers hundreds of thousands of dollars to identify can now be identified using this kind of tooling in a far more immediate and cost-effective manner. And, right now, since access to this kind of frontier model is still relatively limited, what we're really looking at is potentially around a 6-month time horizon before threat actors around the world have access to similarly capable models that they'll be using to, do very bad things. So really one of our priorities right now is working with these frontier models that we have access to figure out the best practices for shoring up our approach to application security for the legacy code bases that we have across the state, just in anticipation of the idea that this is going to get easier and easier for oppositional threat actors over the coming months. So we want to be as far ahead of that at an organizational statewide level as we can. And so again, this initial training, it focused on using these tools specifically within the context of security. And essentially the way we structured it is we had a group of 25 developers join the training, both well, predominantly within ADS. And then we had some folks involved from our partner agencies that we work closely with across the state. Really wide-ranging, specific areas of development. So we had some participants who are working with, our currently more up-to-date cloud native application development stacks. We had some participants who work on decades-old mainframes and are doing the bulk of their development work in older languages like COBOL. So it was a really diverse group. And really our intent was just getting them up to speed on using this security-focused AI tooling effectively, grounding that in our code of ethics and our guidelines for the employee use of artificial intelligence, and then additionally thinking through some of the elements that we've discussed in these sessions previously regarding NIST AI 600-1, the companion profile for NIST's AI risk management framework, and how to actually effectively evaluate the output of these kinds of tools to make sure that we're not missing any of the accordant risks there. So things like hallucinations, security scans that the model claims are broader in scope than they actually are, and so on and so forth. And overall, our goal with this training was to start building out the internal human capacity and knowledge base that we need in order to make sure that this security-focused effort over the next couple months, as well as our broader efforts to modernize the approach that we take to software development more generally, are well situated to succeed. And so we ran through a 2-day curriculum with the cohort. The first, we focused on, again, our AI code of ethics and the guidelines for use of generative AI, and specifically how that impacts best practices for using AI tooling in the context of software development. We introduced the developers to this model that we call human-machine collaboration, which is really just the general idea of clearly delineating, where human oversight belongs in these artificial intelligence workflows, and, what, gotchas and potential risks human developers need to look for as they're incorporating AI tooling into their work, along with the best practices for using the tooling efficiently, to minimize costs and make sure that the output is as reliable as it can be. Then we just talked a little bit about some of the models that we have available, and the capabilities of the respective models, as well as secure practices for using them appropriately in a coding or development context. And then we actually asked all of the developers to bring in legacy code bases to work on over this 2-day training. And in day 1 and then throughout the day on day 2, all of our developers worked through running these tools to actually assess those legacy code bases for vulnerabilities. And then on day 2, we took a more hands-on approach and went through reviewing the AI generated assessments that the tools produced and the recommended patches. And we started working through, again, on a hands-on basis, how to actually assess those reports, things that these tools pulled out, like the business rules for a given application, and again, the hardening patches. So, the main takeaways from my perspective are that this effort overall went really well. Managing a 2-day full day training, especially for something that involves tech, that there's a lot of facilitation and logistics that goes into that. There's a lot that can go a little sideways, and thankfully everything went really smoothly. We were able to get the developers onboarded to the tools pretty effectively, in my opinion. I'm also really thankful with this initial cohort that we selected, just given how engaged they were able to get up to speed really quickly. And throughout this, couple of days of training, they already started identifying some real vulnerabilities in these legacy systems and have begun their remediation work to mitigate those. I'm also really happy with how all of our tie-ins in the curriculum with respect to our employee guidelines and code of ethics, and the best practices for review grounded in the NIST documentation went. It felt like everybody did a really good job picking up on some of the higher level risks and considerations there. And from this first cohort moving forward, I feel like we have what's really starting to look like a reusable sort of rollout playbook in terms of the setup guide for authenticating against the resources the devs need, best practices for troubleshooting, that's going to scale really well for training future cohorts to use these tools in a security context as well. So we're going to be running this security focused training with an additional cohort of developers, likely around the same amount at the end of July, in just a couple weeks here. So we're really excited for that as well. In the interim, we're also going to be developing some trainings to start rolling out Claude Code for developers, starting within our data and AI division at ADS. Just to get them up to speed on less security focused, more generalist practices for implementing Claude Code and related tooling effectively. And there are still a lot of significant unknowns here that we're excited to work through with this pilot cohort as they continue applying these tools in their day-to-day development practices. So how to best standardize the review of the documentation that these tools output, how to best assess the recommended security remediation packages or patches that the tools propose, how that review specifically needs to be structured for lower versus higher risk applications and code bases. There's still a fair amount that we need to learn, but I feel like the framework that we developed here is really solid, and I'm excited to see what this first cohort of 25 developers does. And I'm really looking forward to onboarding additional folks to this effort as well. And John, I saw you had your hand up.
Well, this is really amazing. One thing I'm having a little bit of trouble. So is this in the context of working with Claude Code, which by the way, I'm using as we speak, but working with Claude Code for, to help with the efficiency of government business? Is the security part sort of a subset of that, or was this effort mostly around security? I'm kind of curious how
I can take that one.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So the framing of this was specifically around security because we were looking at the Anthropic has their cyber defenders program. Yeah. And so that was kind of the springboard, was we wanted to be able to maximize our use of that. And also we're looking at, a short time horizon for hardening before Mythos grade tools become available to bad guys. So that was the initial push, was focused on security. The other reason we wanted to do that was there's a lot of standardization around development practices and like both pipeline and tooling that needs to happen before we do a full Claude Code rollout. But we felt that we could integrate the security remediations really quickly into people's existing workflows and build some muscles. And then the last piece of that was there is a lot of these AI tools are really good at assessments, both of like our current business rules and the goals of them. I don't know if you've looked at the code modernization plugin, like it's really strong. And then combining that with, I guess technically, we use the code modernization plugin combined with the defense, security and defense harness that Anthropic put out. Those two things together were like the core of what we taught people to use. And the feedback we got at the end was, wow, the analysis, like there's no way we ever could have done this otherwise. It's too big. But once we've done the analysis, like it takes 5 minutes to patch things. And like that, lowering the friction on that was exactly what we were trying to accomplish.
It just sounds fantastic. It really does. I mean, I'm kind of curious if in the process of doing that, industry is having the same issue. I mean, I can't speak officially for Beta, but we're going through these same thoughts. And I'm curious if the government is reaching out. Is there any forum or forum for discussing best practices for just in this narrow area of security, but overall in deployment?
Yeah, we've been.
I'm not sure if that's an AI Vermont thing, or who could be a convener of that kind of conversation.
Nothing formal to like partner with industry. We have the critical infrastructure cybersecurity working group, and so I've been working with some of the utilities and like banks and stuff in that context, and like taking them through, like, this is how we're approaching it. And I've gotten really good feedback that was helpful. At this point, like, Miles and I are happy to connect with any Vermont business, but there's not like as far as I know, there's not like a program to do it that way. Unless, like, I'm open to recommendations on that, but I think
I don't
sharing
know.
what we've learned, like, this is
Yeah.
totally doable for any organization.
I maybe it's mission creep, but should we be the convener of that? Or I can certainly make the right introductions at Beta if that would be interesting to you. But I'm glad you're reaching out to other industries and stuff like that, because not just on security, but all kinds of best practices is growing so fast that the more people you talk to, the better off you are. Let's talk offline about that if that's okay, and not in
Yeah, that sounds great. And I don't know if it's this group, but maybe we could work with. I mean, I'm trying to figure out who would even be the right group to work with. The chamber, maybe, like somebody with broad reach that could cross industries. Yeah, but yeah, let's talk offline.
It's interesting. Okay, it's really nice. Sounds. Thank you, Miles, very much. That was a great report.
Yeah, just the last slide that I have on this point, just kind of connecting this effort a little bit to our broader AI strategy and the way that we're thinking about rolling out AI tooling within the context of software development. I think that one of the things that we're working through right now is how to best implement a standardized AI native software development lifecycle across our work here at the state of Vermont. There are a lot of challenges and risks there. If you're not familiar, we've really been closely referencing what we call this, or what's called the V-bounce model that was first proposed by a researcher named Corey Heimel back in 2024. The general idea there is that what we're seeing with the application of AI in software development more generally, outside of just the security specific focus, but what we're seeing is that the cost of actually writing code is declining extremely rapidly, which does not inherently make the process of developing software more efficient, because in many respects that shifts bottlenecks to other elements of the SDLC, like verification and QA testing, and ensuring that there are ongoing maintenance and retirement plans for the models that we develop. John, go ahead.
I was going to hit technical debt that by being able to create so much code so fast without a, integrating framework, you end up paying for it a little bit later, but still with a net positive, I think. So you answered the question I was going to ask.
Yeah. And there's another concept there that I've been harping on a lot over the last couple of weeks, which is called Jevons paradox. And if you're not familiar, that this was originated by an economist in the UK in the 1800s, and his finding was that there was a lot of drive in that time frame in the United Kingdom to increase the efficiency of steam locomotives, with the hypothesis that increasing the efficiency of steam locomotives would decrease some of the negative externalities of locomotives, namely pollution and smog. And what actually happened instead is that as the efficiency of the steam locomotive engines increased throughout the late 1800s, it actually increased the demand for coal and increased the demand for freight rail transportation and shipping, because that increased efficiency reduced the cost of locomotive transport. And so that's kind of the heart of the paradox, is the idea that making something more efficient, in many respects, that's ultimately just going to increase the demand for that. And so that there's a lot of thinking right now that we may see something similar with application development with respect to AI, where there's certainly risk or possibility that as these software development costs continue decreasing because of the increasing capability of AI to undertake a lot of this work, if anything, that's likely going to increase the demand for applications across the state. So that really just ties back to your point, John, with respect to the importance of making sure that we have the higher level strategic policies and practices and governance in place to mitigate that technical debt. Because I do think that will likely considerably increase the demand for software, looking out, say, over the next 1 to 2 years or so.
Exactly.
And I'm really excited to continue developing our code and documentation review practices based on this NIST AI 600-1 model. Really this first cohort that we trained over the last 2 days is more or less the first body within Vermont where we're really seeking to thoroughly understand and formalize what code and documentation review in the context of software development with AI tools needs to look like. So we have a lot of work to do there, but I'm really excited about it. Just in terms of the next steps, we're going to be expanding beyond this first 25 developer cohort over the coming weeks. We're going to continue figuring out what these standardized review practices need to look like and just integrating the takeaways that we develop from this effort into our higher level approach to modernizing software development here at the state of Vermont. So yeah, a lot to be excited about for sure. And then with that,
I'll add a whisker more context to it, which is development is, we think, an early one and relatively straightforward because we have already at least notionally those review processes baked into our work. We're using our findings and our learnings here to think about what does this look like for the rest of state government. So we're hoping by the end of July, beginning of August, to have gotten to between 75 and 100 developers that we will have trained on these tools, and then or 75 to 100 people within ADS we will have trained on these tools, and then to expand to outside of IT in August and September and start doing skills workshops with the same Pathfinder methodology across all departments in state government. So we're still kind of working through the details of what that will look like, but that's where we're going. This is a springboard to not just help us with tech, but to help all of the departments around the state.
Josiah, in terms of just the size of the problem for the state legacy software base or application base, have you thought about the level of effort required to do, even just to look at all of the high risk related applications, and whether or not you're going to be able to get to an analysis of some portion of that within the time frame before we see this stuff more readily available? I know that's a loaded question.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry.
No,
I might just say no, Phil, or I won't.
No,
don't want
actually,
to answer.
that's why we're starting now, right? Like that is why we're starting now. Our in-house developed surface is only around 400 applications, and we can scan an application. Medium-sized applications take somewhere around 4 hours. So when you do the math on that, we're just under 2,000 hours, and so we think with 75 people trained, we can get there. But we'll see. We'll see. That doesn't count remediation time. That still takes time too. So it is certainly a significant time investment.
This software, just the emergence of and the sophistication of the software that is coming at us is daunting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can I ask one other question, Josiah? And this is not probably really pertinent to the council, but do you run into I've had some conversations within the larger industry and with folks, and they don't necessarily see the same problems, and that maybe it's even a overreaction. Are you getting mostly a positive response? Yes. How do we do this? Or how would you respond to that? What's the interaction you're seeing across state government?
I think overall, the folks that we're working with, nobody is like, oh yeah, we're overdoing security. Like that isn't the world that any of us live in. So I'm not really getting pushback from there. Where I have seen a lot of concern is how industry is handling its AI rollout, especially as it relates to development and engineering, has not done any favors for those of us who are trying to roll out AI to developers and engineers, right? The well-publicized layoffs and things like that don't make life don't help people be comfortable. And so one of the, I think, most positive pieces of feedback that we got was from a few of our developers who said, this was Wednesday, we started the training, we finished it on Thursday. So Wednesday, when they came in, they really weren't sure they even wanted to be there because of what's been going on in industry. And by the time they finish on Thursday afternoon, they're like, this is great. This is exactly the kind of tools that we need. This is going to help us do our job better. Like, we're really excited to participate in this. And I think that's what we're trying to get to, right? So I don't know if that directly answered your question, Phil, but overall, like, folks see the need to do security better and more effectively.
And we're seeing, because of that spinoff in industry in higher ed, there's a significant decline in students pursuing software development and computing related majors. So there's a decline at a moment in time when if you have 2,000 hours of just analysis to do, and then how many hours to be able to fix that, and that's just going backwards. That's not necessarily going forwards. There's a tremendous body of work here.
Yeah. Yep.
I know we are right at time. So if anybody has any other questions about this effort that we've been undertaking, I would be happy to speak to that. Otherwise, we can shift over to our public comment.
Right. So as you all are formulating thoughts, if you do have anything else for Miles, then you can send it in writing afterwards or wait until our next meeting. Before we close, we are going to open it up for public comment. If there's anyone on the call who's not a member of the council who would like to address the council, please feel free to do so. You can either unmute and speak out loud, or if you prefer, you can also type something up in the chat. We will be watching the chat. And of course, you can also visit the AI Council's page if you want more info or if you want to reach out to us. This is the correct amount of silence. If you are chatting and you just haven't hit send yet, we can still see the chat afterwards. We can reach out. If not, then it looks like we are ready to close. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
I got you.
So moved.
A second.
Boom. These are some very enthusiastic motions at the end of the meeting, folks. All in favor, please celebrate the weekend.
Aye.
I
All opposed, please reconsider. Bye, everyone.
Aye.
Thank you all.
all right, everyone. Good conversation.